Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our Michigan Game Day show for Oklahoma Week. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Joining us in just a few minutes will be Chris Balas from the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine ON3. Before that, let's get it started with my view from Section 17. It's always good to get the opener under your belt, especially when it's a win. We waited a long time to see Bryce Underwood play, and he did not disappoint against New Mexico. So some questions surrounding this team were answered on Saturday. Many remain, though. Saturday night's game in Norman, at night on national TV, will tell us more about this team. Bryce will be facing a very good defense, and Brent Venables will no doubt test him. It's not all on Bryce, though. If the offensive line can get push and keep playing nasty, especially on the road, that will help our young quarterback. Wink Martindale's defense will get its first real test, too. Oklahoma was not happy with their offense last season, so they made changes. They brought in quarterback John Mateer. They bolstered the offensive line with some portal guys, as well as the receiver room. They did look good against Illinois State, but Saturday will be a different kind of test for them, too. There is a lot of pressure on Brent Venables to show he has this team on a path to compete at the top of the SEC. A win would silence the doubters, for a minute maybe. A loss, and the pressure ratchets up on Venables and his staff. It's early in the season, but this game has huge implications for both teams. At his Monday presser, Brent Venables talked about what a great opportunity this would be for his team.
We got a great opportunity this week with Michigan coming into town. It's going to be a really cool matchup of, again, two incredible programs that represent all the excellence in college football for a long, long time. So going to be really exciting from an environment standpoint. Game day will be here. That's cool. We get attracted, some of the best talent in the country will also be on campus. From a recruiting standpoint, and for our football team, most importantly, get an opportunity for us to match up with what's been in the last several years, one of the best teams in college football.
Venables was on staff when Sharon played there and talked about his strong leadership skills as a player.
Obviously, he was a great player, a great leader, ultra consistent. He was a guy that loved to compete, super physical. One of the linemen that he did the methodical very, very well. Just day in and day out, ultra consistent, really smart. Guys gravitated to his leadership style.
My guest today says he doesn't think we'll see a game plan that protects Bryce Underwood on Saturday night. He says Michigan has nothing to lose in this one, so they'll probably let it rip on offense. Up next is Chris Balas from the Wolverine ON3 and the Wolverine magazine. So stay with us.
joining us on our game day segment of the show this week as we get ready for that big trip to Norman, Oklahoma, is Chris Balas from the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine On3. Great to have you back, Chris.
Mike, thanks for having me, brother.
Well, we finally have a football season underway, and man, people have waited a long time to get a look at Bryce Underwood in action. And, I have to say, he surprised me on Saturday night. I wasn't, sure what to expect, but calm, cool, collected performance. Your take on what you saw from Bryce?
Yeah, honestly, one of the best openers I've ever seen for a Michigan quarterback, let alone a class, being a freshman, right? And I remember seeing Chad Henne play against Miami of Ohio. I remember seeing John Navarre in his redshirt freshman year, I think it was, when he went out there for Drew Henson and had a good game against the MAC school. But when you talk about skill set, I've never seen anything like this in Ann Arbor. The size, the ability to roll out either way, throw back across his body, the arm strength, the poise, the touch, the accuracy was really got me. And I was listening to Jason X post-game, the New Mexico coach, talk about that. And he said, I was watching him in warm-ups and every ball was right on the money. And he said, I hoped when we got some pressure on him or when we got into a game situation that it would be different, but it wasn't. It was remarkable. So it's a bigger test, obviously, on Saturday. For example, New Mexico's defensive backs were playing way off the Michigan receivers. I'm guessing that's not going to be the case at Oklahoma. There were some guys wide open in the secondary, though, and that's something we haven't seen. Chip Lindsey, Michigan's new offensive coordinator, is scheming guys open, but there are bigger tests to come. But, Mike, I got to tell you, I was impressed beyond what I thought I would be in terms of his skill set. I was really blown away, frankly.
Yeah, when I was watching him, I thought, hey, this kid just turned 18 a few weeks ago. He's really
crazy.
High school age. And there he is making his first college start on national TV in a primetime game. And he looked like he was in total command of the offense, didn't he?
He did, and it was a complex offense. That's the crazy part about it. You had different looks. You had all kinds of different movements before the snap. You had dummy pulls where guys were, to really fool defenses. You had fullbacks that were going different ways than where the ball was going, misdirections and everything else. And but he had it down pat, and he knew exactly where he wanted to go with the ball. And the swing passes, everything was right on the money. The difference between a good pass and a bad pass on a swing pass is a couple of feet. Mm-hmm. It's got to be right there to give a guy a running start. And we saw it with Samaj Morgan. Every pass seemed to be right on the money, and we have not seen that for a while here. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy did it, and I don't want to slight what he did here because he was remarkable, top 10 pick. He just didn't have the same size as a Bryce Underwood. What I wonder is, are we going to see more of his legs now, too, without a viable backup? And really, they're kind of lacking that right now. How much do you put him in harm's way with his feet? At the same time, This offense, I think, goes up exponentially. The ceiling does, if you let him do some things with his feet. So, but where he went with the ball, some of the plays that were called and the routes that were run, again, it was remarkable. And my jaw hit the floor, and I wasn't the only one. I was watching the response on social media. All these Michigan guys were saying the same thing.
Well, other than getting a chance to see Bryce in his first start, my focus, like I know yours was on that offensive line play. I know you watch it closely. It looked to me like they were coming off playing some angry football in the entirety of that game. Yeah, there were some mistakes, but what did you like about their performance, and what do you think needs to be cleaned up pretty soon?
Yeah, I agree with you. They were aggressive and played with intent, and that was something that was lacking last year. And I think part of that was that they were unsure of themselves last year. But two things that stood out when I talked to Doug Skeen, my podcast partner, who played at Michigan in the early 1990s on the offensive line, and John Jansen, they both said the same thing. They were picking up the stunts and the twists and the games up front much better than they did last year. There were no run-through linebackers that were coming untouched. That should never happen. And so those were two things that were cleaned up in the opener. And again, when they don't have to play speed rushers on the outside, the tackles, for example, Evan Link at left and Andrew Sprague at right, it makes it a little bit easier. And we're going to see much better defensive players when we see them play Oklahoma on Saturday night. But these guys were in the right positions and really did seem to take it personal that they were the weak link last year. Let's be honest, they were. So, but that was what really stood out to me, the communication, the way that they were playing with a purpose, and they were getting some push. You didn't see the backs getting hit in the backfield like we did last year. Sometimes these guys had to make their first move at a yard or 3 yards, and on the Justice Haynes' long touchdown run, the first one, he didn't get touched. So those were all good signs. And I understand it's not great competition, but at the same time, last year they were struggling against bad competition. So really liked what I saw. And, a lot of people look at the stats and they say, well, other than those 2 big runs by Haynes, they only averaged 3 yards a carry or something like that. Doesn't work that way. And I do think that there is going to be, for a first effort, I thought it was good. And I do think there's going to be gradual improvement as we go on through the season.
Well, the talk before the season was that we had a 1A and a 1B in the running back room. Justice Haynes was the 1A this Saturday night, and man, he was very impressive. And the entire time I watched him, Chris, I thought to myself, how did Alabama let this kid get away?
I talked to 2 reporters from Alabama, and they said, yeah, they like him. He's a nice back, but they pay the guys they want to keep, and they think they have better backs. And after that game on Saturday night, what I wrote was, yeah, okay, you keep thinking that because this kid is special. And they thought that in practice leading up in the summer. They said, okay, we've got to break away back here. And in fact, Sharon Moore told his offensive coaches, he said he's going to break one for 50. And when it happened on Saturday night, he goes up to Grant Newsom and gives him a playful shove, like I told you so. And but you can see the breakaway speed, you can see the vision. There were a couple times that the guys missed holes, but Haynes is a good back, and they said, yeah, he's going to break some outside, and you're going to see some home runs from him. And we saw a couple. That is a weapon, especially when you don't have those really breakaway receivers and deep threats, in my opinion, on the receiving corps. So that's going to help. And Jordan Marshall, I feel bad for him just because a lot of the calls that he got, a lot of the carries he got were on read options where Bryce Underwood was not going to keep it. They told him basically, you don't keep the ball in this game. And so he was kind of running into the pile a little bit, but I have no doubt that he's going to be a great complimentary back to Haynes. And everybody who we talked to said they were neck and neck in the camp. And I have no doubt that he's going to have his great games too.
No, I think we all have to feel pretty good about the running back room right now. I know the game plan was designed, I'm guessing, to get Bryce comfortable in his first collegiate start. I was a little bit surprised we threw 31 times and didn't seem to really pound the ball more. I'm not really concerned about that, but did that game plan somewhat surprise you?
It's Chip Lindsey, right? And that's who he is. And when the one that really surprised me, Mike, was when they were backed up inside their own 10. And you're thinking, okay, in the past, you're running twice and maybe a third time and either punting or barely getting a first down. And they throw that little touch pass to Marlon Klein over the defense on play action. And I'm saying, okay, this is not our dad's or our grandfather's Michigan football here. That was remarkable. And Fred Jackson, Michigan's analyst, who was a former running backs coach and offensive coordinator here, told me in the offseason, he said, get ready. He said, this is not going to be predictable. It's not going to be 3rd and 2 and you're automatically going to run it into the line and hope to get a first down and 2 carries. He said, Chip is not going to run it into a stacked box. He's going to do some different things. And sure enough, that's exactly what we saw. But when you have a talent like Underwood and you trust him, even as a true freshman, you've really got to do that, right? It's not like they're abandoning the run. They had over 200 yards rushing too. But, that cliche that the fans always like to use of using the pass to open up the run, that's pretty much what they did. And to me, it looked different, but it was kind of refreshing too, because you saw so many different looks and so many unique variables in this offense that we haven't seen before, whether it was rollouts, whether it was those dummy pulls, whether it was RPOs. I saw 7 RPOs in the first half. I watched the film yesterday, run pass options that blew my mind. So it's exciting, and I think it's necessary in this day and age. But we'll see. We still got to be able to pick up those 1 and 2 yard gains, right, on short yardage. And that's what we're going to find out. Is this offensive line mean and nasty enough to continue to do that?
Well, some of my concerns about the receiver room were, somewhat alleviated in that game. But let's start with Marlon Klein. I mean, we've heard for years what a freak athletically he was, and he's got that big, tall body. In the past, I've heard people say, well, he struggles catching the ball at times.
Yeah.
Man, he looked good Saturday night, didn't he?
He looked like a pro. Yeah. Let's be honest. The way he ran and his size, if he continues to play like that, he's going to be an NFL tight end. So, and it helps when you got a guy like Bryce Underwood throwing to you, right, and putting the ball right where it needs to be. But he had some tough catches, balls that were humming. Let's be honest, that ball's coming hard, and he picked them out of the air. So that was impressive. Really loved what I saw from him because there were some questions, even just a couple of weeks ago after a scrimmage, I had somebody at practice who played the position talk to me and said, look, this could be a work in progress, this tight end room, especially until Hogan Hansen gets back from an off-season shoulder injury, and he didn't play on Saturday, obviously, the Michigan sophomore. So, and then Marlon Klein goes out and has 93 yards, and I'm thinking, okay, this is pretty damn good. So I was excited about it. I was happy for him. As a captain, he really stepped up, and if they can get Hansen back there and get Klein in there to continue to do what he did, that's going to be a great 1-2 punch at tight end and give them another receiving threat. I don't care where it is. I don't care if it's a receiver, if it's a tight end. We saw with Colston Loveland last year that it can be a tight end that you can use as a big receiver if you get the right matchup. So that really, really bodes well for this offense.
Well, we had heard in the offseason that Channing Goodwin had made big strides, and we heard right, because he looked really good on Saturday night, didn't he?
I thought he was the most polished of all the receivers. All the talk had been about Donovan McCulley, the Indiana transfer, and I thought Goodwin, with his route running, with his blocking, and with his effortless catching with his hands right in stride, looked to me like Michigan's best receiver on Saturday night. Now, maybe that'll change coming up here in the next few days, and we still have to see what he can do in terms of if he's getting press coverage, if somebody's coming up on him, and is he going to be able to get off the line? Is he strong enough? But I love the legacies. I really do, because it really seems to mean more to them, having grown up in it and wanting to represent not just the university, but their dads, right? And he's the son of Jonathan Goodwin, who played here. So I always had a feeling about him, and they said in the offseason, I really thought he looked good in the spring game, frankly. And then for him to come on like he did and beat out Fred Moore for that number 3 spot, and what he did, I thought on Saturday night was impressive. So I want to see more of McCulley. I want to see if they've got a third guy. Morgan exceeded my expectations. That's kind of who he is, right? That swing back, or that swing receiver that you can throw swing passes to and turn short gains into longer gains. But if they could get one more guy out there to really emerge, I would feel much better about it.
Well, in openers, Chris, especially with a big-time game coming up the next week, we usually see a vanilla game plan, but it looked to me like we were doing a lot offensively, maybe not, but do you think Michigan held back a lot against New Mexico Saturday?
I think they probably did, and it's kind of funny because you say that and you wonder, okay, and I actually asked about this in my column too, did we see page 1 to page 2 of the playbook, or is there page 3, 4, 5, 6? Because we know they didn't show everything, but like I said, when you're throwing RPOs out there, you need practice. You need to get Bryce Underwood practice for those bigger games, so you're going to need to do some of that stuff. At the same time, you don't want to show everything. And again, we didn't see anything with his feet, right? I think he had -5 yards rushing. He was sacked a couple times, and there were a couple times he rolled out where I thought he could have run. But the one good thing about him is he's always looking downfield, right? And finding those receivers when things break down instead of scrambling. And obviously that's the choice, right? If you are given an option of having your quarterback run for 7 or throw for 15 on a play, you're going to have the latter. So we'll see what else they come out with, but I have no question, and I wrote this in my column for the football preview. I said Chip Lindsey, in my opinion, is one of the surest things in terms of going to have success here. And sure enough, we got a glimpse of it on Saturday.
We sure did, and I can't wait to see what happens on Saturday night against Oklahoma.
Right.
Flip it over to the other side of the ball, Chris. Wink's defense, I thought, was really solid most of the game. I think that quick pass offense that New Mexico was running is really frustrating to try to play against. But, overall, I thought it was a very, very solid performance from the D. Yeah,
and more than anything, you wanted to see him stop the run, and they did that. They kind of had to abandon that early. This is a coach and a quarterback that with Idaho last year went into Oregon and had him in a 3-point game in the fourth quarter and lost by 10, right? And that's an Oregon team that had a really good year, obviously, last season. So they were not intimidated. I thought that spread was really high, and they brought a lot of guys with them from Idaho. So it was almost, and I kind of compared it to Curt Cignetti at Indiana when he brought his entire FCS team with him almost to Indiana, a bunch of guys who had played together that might not be quite as talented, but they certainly know how to play the game. And I give them credit for how hard they played, and that quarterback, Jack Lane, the beating he took, but where he went with the ball and some of the throws he made. And let's be honest, that could easily have been a 41-10 game if you don't get the crappy targeting call, if you don't have the pass on the sidelines that was incomplete, if that's called correctly, or if Michigan had reviewed that, had that reviewed. then we're looking at a much different ball game. But overall, I thought it was fine. I think there are some things to tighten up in the secondary. Jair Hill got a little handsy at corner. Some of the passing plays, there were a couple of busted coverages, but that's a first game, and they knew exactly where to go with the ball, right? If Michigan's coming on a blitz, it's a throw it where they ain't offense, and we saw them beat them that way a few times. But I think you're going to see a different game plan from Martindale. I think he's going to have a better idea of what he's got. He said he was going to play to his strength, which was the linebackers this year. But I tell you what, those defensive ends were living in the backfield. It didn't matter who it was, especially though the backups, Dominic Nichols and Nate Marshall, true freshmen, were getting in there. TJ Guy obviously had the big play with the interceptions. So I look for them to have a much better week 2. And like you, I was impressed enough in week 1 and confident that they'll be able to clean some things up there in the secondary.
Well, you mentioned the targeting hit. Fans, of course, Michigan fans are still talking about that. Jayshon Barham getting tossed from the game on the targeting call. I mean, to me, that's one of those things. They could call that all day. But it was the quarterback. I'm thinking that's why they stood firm and upheld the targeting call. But, man, Sharon's right. They need to take a look at that rule, don't they?
They do, and it's so subjective, right? I saw a couple other games during the weekend where there were obvious targetings and a guy's laid out and they overturn it on review. And I'm thinking there was absolutely no intent there with Barham to go in head first. He's 6'5" against a 5'11" quarterback, if that. What's he supposed to do? He turns his head a little bit. He's not leading with a crown. There's no intent to hurt. He didn't finish on top of him where he was trying to rub him into the ground or anything like that. So it is something that's got to be looked at, but at the same time, I think it's always going to be a subjective call, and it's unfortunate. It just is what it is. So I understand what they're trying to do in protecting the quarterbacks and protecting kids, but it's so subjective that, hey, I really just don't know what you do about it. You've got to have the call, in my opinion, to get that out of the game, but at the same time, you got to use some common sense here. They did not, and the fact that it wasn't overturned on appeal was really disappointing because you can make anything look terrible, Mike, when you slow something down frame by frame, right?
Right.
See a kid's head snap back or something like that. In real time, it didn't look like targeting, and I didn't think it looked like targeting when they slowed it down either, but that's just kind of the world we live in now.
While I hate to miss him for the first half on Saturday, I thought seeing Cole Sullivan and Jimmy Rolder play, at least for 2 quarters, I think we're okay there.
I do too, and I think, I got to be honest, I think Cole Sullivan's a rising star. You look at him, he had the pick, he had the sack, he is all over the place, and I can't remember the depth that Michigan's had in the linebacking core like this in a long, long time. We have 4 guys that you really, really believe in. Holder's been banged up for a couple of years, and now he's back and he's healthy. So the thing with Barham is he was my dark horse to lead the team in sacks this year, and we saw him getting there like he was shot out of a cannon a few times, and that's what they're going to be missing on Saturday. But at the same time, they've got other guys in there that they can use in a similar way, right? I was talking about those defensive ends. I think Sullivan's the guy that might not have that burst, but he certainly got what it takes to replace him at least for a half. So I'm not really that concerned, but at the same time, you want to have your full complement of players when you play a team like Oklahoma, especially with a guy like John Matera, quarterback.
Oh, amen. Well, Saturday night will be the first real test on both sides of the ball. Still, I think it's going to be fun to watch what Bryce can do against what we think is a pretty darn good Oklahoma defense, Chris.
Yeah, they're fast, and they've got some guys up front. The biggest concern I have is those defensive ends against the Michigan tackles. We saw Sprague get beat a couple times. We saw Link. He didn't get beat, but there were a couple times that, okay, it was close, right? That where a guy was going to get around him with a speed rush. So that's going to be what I'm going to be anxious to see and how Michigan counters that. Are they going to roll Underwood out a little bit more? And is he going to have those open receivers like he did against New Mexico, against that defense? And how much do you run him on the read option? So these are all things that I can't wait to see. I'm anticipating a lower scoring game. I don't think either team is going to do a ton offensively. Mateer, if you look at his track record at Washington State against Power 5 opponents, not great. And in fact, I think 50% completion rate and more interceptions than touchdowns. So I think this defense is going to give him some fits, and that Wink Martindale is going to have a lot of different looks for him. So I think it'll be a tight game, and it's going to come down to turnovers. We got to hope that Bryce Underwood is as good in the opener protecting the ball as he was on Saturday.
Yeah, well, before the season started, I thought, hey, we're going to go down to Oklahoma. It's not a vanilla game plan, but I thought, we're going to lean on that offensive line in the running game to sort of take the pressure off of Bryce. But after watching him in the opener against New Mexico, I think, you know what? We might go in there and let it rip. Nothing to lose, really, at all.
No, I agree. You win that game, you become a favorite to make the playoff, right? Your odds go up exponentially because there are 4 swing games. And if you win that one at Oklahoma, then, man, you're looking pretty good. You got at Nebraska, at USC, and then, of course, Ohio State. But Nebraska didn't look like a world beater, in my opinion. And it's not just the score, but if you look at the personnel, they looked a little bit smaller. I think Michigan's going to be able to move the ball on them. But Oklahoma's the big test, and I agree with you. You've got nothing to lose. Go out there and let it rip, and you've got a talent like Bryce Underwood, and at the very least, you're going to get him that experience. I don't think it does anybody any favors to sit there and especially with the special teams not as good as they should be, Mike. If Michigan had a great running game, right, and you've got that great defense, and you're going to get the booming punts, and you're going to get the hidden yards in the return game, then I would think maybe you play a little conservative, but they don't have that right now. So I think you've got a weapon like Bryce Underwood. You turn him loose, hope for the best, and see what happens.
Well, after watching Oklahoma against Illinois State, Chris, I have to say I was impressed with John Mateer. He's a smaller kind of a quarterback, very accurate. He's a runner, too, very mobile guy. Ran for, I think, over 800 yards last year for Washington State. It's going to be fascinating for me to watch what Wink does to attack him.
Yeah, I agree. And again, against better defenses, he has struggled, and some of it is his size, but he's been around for a long time. He knows how to run an offense, and that's going to be the key, right? Shut down the running game. I was encouraged they couldn't run the ball against Illinois State, so this is going to be one of those games where maybe they have to throw 40 times, right? 35 times. So he's capable. At the same time, if you make a defense or an offense one-dimensional, then you're going to have a better chance to win. That's just the way it goes. So I think, like I said, if you look at what Wink did against Alabama last year, for example, in the bowl game, the ReliaQuest Bowl, and there was almost the exact same personnel on the field last year as we will see in this game because a lot of guys sat out last year, a lot of the starters. I think they're going to be aggressive. I think you're going to see them be more aggressive, and I think you're going to see some things that we didn't see. I think it was vanilla at times on Saturday night. We didn't see a ton of blitzing, right? There were a lot of times people said, well, they weren't getting enough pass rush, but that ball was out in 2 seconds, right? And there were guys, and I'll tell you what, Jack Lane will tell you, New Mexico's quarterback, he got hit a ton. That guy probably spent the week in the ice tub. Yeah. So, but you're going to see different looks from Martindale. This is a game I can tell you that Sharon Moore really, really wants to win against his alma mater. They're going to let it all hang out, and I can't wait, man. This week's dragging, buddy.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, heading into Saturday, I don't think anyone really has a good feel on either side for how this game will go. I mean, a Michigan win, of course, is a huge springboard for a team that's led by a freshman quarterback. A loss, that's not a killer. I know before the season, a lot of people had this as an L on the calendar, but after seeing that New Mexico game and getting a chance to see Oklahoma play, what does your gut tell you?
Yeah, my gut tells me it's going to be a lower scoring game. I'm looking at 23-20 or something like that, and I think it could go either way. And I think it's going to come down to the turnovers. If Bryce Underwood protects the ball, if Michigan can run the ball a little bit and control the clock a little bit that way, it's funny how quickly these games are going now with the new rules, right? I was watching the Notre Dame-Miami game, and I think Miami had an 8.5-minute drive, and the quarter's half over, and the game just flew. So there aren't as many possessions anymore. So you got to take advantage of them, and you cannot turn the ball over. So, but I'm with you. I don't think that they're going to play it conservative. I think they're going to play to their strength. And to me, if you look at it, their two best players right now are Bryce Underwood and Justice Haynes, and you've got to rely on them, even if one of them's a freshman. So, but I think it'll be a fourth quarter game. Having Dominic Zabata out there makes me feel a lot better. Michigan's kicker, if it comes down to that guy is absolute money, might be the best kicker that we've ever seen here at Michigan. So I think it's going to be, I'm going to pick Oklahoma to win in a tight one, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if Michigan pulled one out.
Well, final question before we let you get away, Chris. From a
Yep.
Michigan perspective, I think we all agree we have a puncher's chance on Saturday night, no doubt about that. But, when you talk to people at Oklahoma, I think if there is pressure on Saturday night, it's on Oklahoma and Venable. There's, a lot of folks down there in Norman starting to say or ask the question, where is this program headed? But they've got a primetime game at home, ESPN game day in town, and a lot of people, again, questioning the program. For the Sooners and their fan base, the pressure's on them. And this almost, to me, after talking to people down in Norman, feels like a must-win game for them.
I agree. If you look at their schedule now in the conference, right, it's a murderer's row. And so you better beat a questionable Michigan team. And when I say questionable, I mean in a couple of years or next year, this team will be competing for national championships, in my opinion. But this is one of those teams where if you're going to get Michigan, you better get him now. And you better get him at home if you're Oklahoma. Venables, I think he's on the clock. And I think that's a program with a lot of pride. And so the pressure is on them. And if things start to go poorly early, if you can take the crowd out of that game and do some things with your defense and make things tough for Mateer, I could see this game going well for Michigan. So I think there's more than a puncher's chance, Mike. I think Michigan's got a solid chance to win this game, especially with those athletes. I don't think we saw on Saturday everything that this defense can do. I do know what Wink Martindale thinks of his group, and I think that they are going to make life tough for Mateer. It's going to be fun. I can't wait to get down there and see what happens.
Yeah, I can't wait either. I mean, these are the games, as both coaches said, that you come to Oklahoma to play, come to Michigan to play. So going to be a lot of fun, great atmosphere. Can't wait. Wish the days would flip by quicker so we can see it.
You're right.
So, joining us today, of course, talking about the game last Saturday against New Mexico, and then looking ahead to Saturday night in Norman, has been Chris Balas from the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine ON3. Chris, always a pleasure to have you on the show, and we thank you for your time and look forward to that next visit here later this season.
You bet. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
On Quick Hits today, not much injury news reported this week. Sharon did say Hogan Hansen has been practicing full speed, and if the doctors clear him, we could see him in action Saturday night. Here are a few game day notes of interest. Michigan and Oklahoma have only played one time. That was in the 1976 Orange Bowl, a 14-6 win for the Sooners. Brent Venables is in his fourth year as head man in Norman. His record is 22-17. Last year, he was 6-7 overall, 2-6 in the SEC. They returned 4 starters on offense, 6 on defense. Last year, they played in the Armed Forces Bowl and lost to Navy 21-20. The weatherman says it should be a perfect night for football. Temps in the low 70s at kickoff, with light winds and a very slight chance of rain. ESPN will be handling the game. Kickoff time is just after 7:30 p.m. Eastern. So last week we were happy just to get the season started, see Bryce play, and pick up the W. This week is another story. Oklahoma is ranked number 18. They have home field advantage, and the program really needs to get a win. It should be an entertaining matchup. Next week we are back home to face Central Michigan in the Big House. On Tuesday's Visitors Edition, our scheduled guest is Adam Jacksa, the radio play-by-play voice of CMU football. On Thursday's Michigan Game Day show, we'll be joined by beat writer Aaron McMahon from MLive. That does it for another week. Make sure you tell your family and friends about the show, like us on X, and leave your comments or reviews wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. Think victory, beat Oklahoma. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go Blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!